what difference does it make very, very practically to just come to the agreement, I'm not over you, you're not over me, he's over us both. And we both are under his authority, and he is the one who is over this marriage.
Well, I think for a woman, practically knowing that God is over it is safe. Because not even if, but when a husband sins, if he's submitting to God and she's submitting to God, she feels like it'll get worked out and God's going to resolve this because we're both going to submit to him. And if he's, on the passive side, then she can appeal to the Lord to help him to lead. If he's on the domineering side, then she can appeal to the Lord that he would have a softer heart and learn that. But when God's over it, you have someone to appeal to. And you don't feel like it's just you and your struggle and you don't know what to say or do because it's just you.
And knowing that God is literally over it, we dealt with in the first episode, God's blessing. If you're not acknowledging God's authority, rule and reign over your marriage, then he's not going to bless it because he only blesses his will, not our will. And I'll never forget some years ago, God spoke to me and he said, before she was your wife, she was my daughter. Mm-hmm. And it was his way of just reminding me like, I'm over you and I'm over this marriage and that is my daughter. Mm-hmm. And now that I have daughters, I see exactly what he was talking about. But what are the practical ways or just some suggestions? Theoretically, most Christian couples would say, well, we know it's not just us, that it's also the Lord. And yeah, he's over our marriage. But practically, what does this look like for a couple to live under God's authority over both of them in the marriage so that they're alongside one another, working to obey God, but they're not trying to rule over one another as God?
Mm-hmm. Well, being in the Word together and separately, you have your own relationship with the Lord, and you have to give an account for that someday, and you can't blame it on your spouse. And worshiping together, same church, doing the same things to worship God
being
together.
Under the same teaching in the same community. Yeah. And I mean, how would you feel as a woman if I wasn't in the scriptures or I wasn't in prayer or I wasn't in worship?
Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't feel safe if you think the husband's not under the submission of God.
Yeah. Because, if your spouse isn't under God's authority, and they're not living practically under God's authority, the odds of them putting themselves in harm's way that could cause catastrophic damage to the marriage and family is exceedingly high.
Yeah, spiritually and emotionally, it just doesn't feel like peaceful.
Yeah. And how does this work out then when it comes to making big decisions? Usually a couple, when they've got to make decisions, usually there's one person who's the dominant personality and sort of pushes for the outcome that they want. Sometimes that can lead to a lot of stalemates or a lot of conflict, or one person feeling like they're sort of being drug along or pushed along and they're not really being considered in the decision-making process. What does that look like for a husband and a wife to both say, we're going to find God's will?
Yeah, I think we talked about pros and cons. I think figuring out for each of us what our pros and cons are in a situation, and then coming together and having a conversation. And for me, I know that sometimes my decisions can come out of fear. And so I have to be careful not to consider something or try and make a decision out of fear. So when I come with my ideas and you come with your ideas and we sit down and talk about it, we can point those things out to each other. And then we can say, okay, Lord, this is what we've come together. Please show us, give us wisdom in this. And if we're way off track, we need to know that. If we're going in the right direction and you have a plan here, then we want to know that as well. And so it's considering one another, but it's above that, seeking the Lord's will.